For the reading of the scripture today, it's taken from Psalm 139, verses 1 through 18. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle to the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and night wraps itself around me, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you.
Good morning. So we're continuing the series this morning called Seeking Peace Together. Why do we seek peace? Is it because we want a nice, quiet life with nobody bothering us? Well, that's nice. But peace really, when we really experience peace with ourselves and with others, with God, with creation, that's really indicating that we're living the way we should be, that things are in balance, and that we're living the life that God intended. We've heard 3 wonderful sermons from Jeanette, and as you know, this series was outlined in some denominational materials, but it doesn't write the sermon. And I can tell you that Jeanette, just looking at what is provided, that she's really put a lot of energy into it. And I think the recorded sermons, at some point, all of us might want to go back and listen to some of them again. So the first 3 sermons all had to do with peace with God. And Jeanette talked about the importance of prayer, of believing in God, not just believing things, but really being all in and abiding in Jesus. The words that you'll hear this morning are beginning to address the topic of peace within. And then there will be peace with others and peace with creation. Most of these each have 3 sermons. I think there's one that has 4. So we begin today looking at peace within on the topic of known and loved. What does that really mean? So the scripture that Debbie read really talks about how God knows us inside and out. Now, the focus is on being not only known, but loved. Did you hear the word loved anywhere as Debbie was reading? I think actually it does not appear in here, but God is our creator and he knows everything about us. The creator instinctively loves what they have created. I'd like you to think of something that you made that you are fond of. It can be something physical, something more theoretical, but something that you've made that you really became fond of. And think about what steps were involved in its creation. How well did you know your creation? And why would you say you were fond of that particular thing that you made? In a few minutes, I'm going to share and talk about something that I made. But before we do that, I'd like you each to find one other person, and if necessary, if there's an odd person out, it can be three. But just take a few minutes. I'd like you to pair up briefly. And ideally, if you're bold enough to pair up with somebody that's not your spouse, and just see if you can answer those questions. So we'll start, and after 2 or 3 minutes, I'll say, okay, if the first person is still talking, the other person talk now. And so we'll take 4 or 5 minutes altogether. So go for it. Okay, I think we'll wrap up that little exercise. I hope that got you reflecting on the creative process and the connection that being a creator creates with what you've created. Now, the thing I'm going to show in a minute, and most likely what you spoke about, is nowhere nearly as complex and wonderful as what God has created. But we are creative people. We have inherited creativity from our Creator. So, dramatic moment here. So, have you ever seen a wood chain? This was created in 1964. My grandfather said, I was 15, my grandfather said, be sure to take a wood burner and burn the date on the bottom and your name, because somebody will wonder sometime who made it and when was it made. This was created out of a single piece of wood. It was a piece of wood that, was this square the whole way through. And if you line up the chain links, you'll see that the idea basically is to mark out that sort of thing for the chain portion and then start carving so that you have, basically like an X that forms the whole length. And then you simply start carving out the individual links on each side. And when you have the rounded portion carved away, then you start whittling in between each link until it eventually comes apart. Now, as the creator of this, I know it inside and out. And I wouldn't tell you this otherwise, but there's one link that broke, it got broken, and it got fixed. And you can hardly even tell that it ever happened. And as a creator, I love it just as much as if it was had never been broken. So I love it, and I've kept it for 6 decades. The Creator not only knows us as individuals, but the Creator reveals himself through the creation. I've had some interesting discussions with someone who's really struggling with believing there's a God. And uh, this is something that personally I look to nature to help convince myself that there's a God. Just the wonderful complexity of the natural world. And just to give you a sense of this, and these are fairly commonplace nature photos, but these are some photos that I've enjoyed taking around our place. Now, what can better illustrate the wonderful nature of the Creator than the peacock? Apple blossoms, just the wonderful colors and how the bees come and pollinate them. This is a view across our main road to our neighbor's place. Little pussycat, he's much bigger now and is a big mischief maker. The simple dandelion, the tiger lily, a, a butterfly, and all the cycles of life that a butterfly goes through. Spiders, magical webs, and all the complexities of the life of a spider. A little baby chick in the hands of Trish. And maple leaves and how they change colors, just the cycles of trees. So we as humans and nature really truly are fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, in those verses that we looked at, somebody suggested that some people might actually find God's knowledge of us scary. When you look over some of that, it's almost like God's following us. Is God stalking us? And it even says, you hem me in behind and before, lay your hand upon me. Well, if you've ever actually been stalked, it's possible that you might get triggered by such words. And if so, I apologize, but I think that's truly not the intention of this. The psalmist ends by saying, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's so high that I cannot attain it. Basically, he's saying that God created us, he knows all about us, and truly does care about us. And in fact, these verses 8 through 10 really make it clear. In fact, there it says, no matter where I go, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand should hold me fast. So really, it's not about stalking, it's about guidance and protection. In verses 16 and 17, it says, your eyes beheld my unformed substance. God knew about us before we were even born. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, where none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God, how vast is the sum of them. When my children were quite young, especially with my daughter Allison, I would often say, if I was trying to describe something that happened before she was born, I would say, when you are just an idea in God's mind, such and such happened. And I remember specifically, she always sort of looked a bit wide-eyed, like, wow. And I think she liked that idea. But one day when she'd gotten, I don't know, 4 or something like that, I said that, and she said, I don't want to be an idea in God's mind. So it was almost as though at that point she knew she was a human being, and she actually wanted to be the real live human being that she actually was. I asked her the other day if she remembers me saying that, and she said, oh yeah. And she said she got a big laugh out of hearing that, hearing me recall what she had said at that point. So how does knowing that we're known and loved, how does that actually contribute to peace? So I'd like you to think back over your life. Think about one friend or family member in whose company you felt most at peace. Just think about that. I'm not going to ask you to share it or anything like that. Was it somebody who knew you well, who looked out for you, and who loved you as unconditionally as a human can love? I suspect it was, because isn't it true that there's nothing more relaxing and reassuring than being both known and loved? Sometimes we might feel loved, but we think, I wonder if that person knew this about me, would they still love me? And that's not how God works. So this whole topic, this message and the next 2 on the topic of peace within, comes after that first section on peace with God. Do you think the people that worked out that series did that in the right sequence? Should peace within come second? I suspect if somebody that was writing it from a pop psychology standpoint would have drafted that, they would say, well, you start with peace within because you have to have peace within. And I think really it does make sense the way it was, because that first section talked about prayer, talking with God, believing in God, abiding in Jesus. That's how we truly come to really recognize and appreciate that we are known and loved. And that's really a blessing when we experience that. I think undoubtedly it's easier for those of us who are fortunate to have been raised in a home where we really felt a lot of love from our parents. It's a lot easier actually for us to experience that. But certainly my prayer is that everybody, no matter what your background is, that you would be able to come to really know and appreciate the fact that you are known and loved. So God made you. Because he created you, he knows you inside and out, and he uses that knowledge to guide you if you choose to listen to his quiet voice. He knows every cell in your body, every thought in your mind, and he loves you just the same. You are known and you are loved. May each of us open our eyes and our hearts to this truth and experience the peace that comes from this amazing fact. So be at peace.